that need to prove something was so overwhelming that it consumed me. And, that was always going to be the next thing that made it better. Like, if I run for higher office, that'll make it better. If I do this, that'll make it better.
Yeah.
And in fact, every time I took a step to do something more intense or go deeper into the space of success in politics, the worse it got.
I'm here today with Leah Johnson, and we are here to talk about her life, leadership, business journey, but most importantly, her journey through recovery and finding a life filled with fantastic joy. Check it out. Hey, thanks for tuning into this week's episode. Would you make sure to please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel here, and please share this episode with somebody whose life it will make better. Leah Johnson, good to have you.
Thanks for having me, Matt. This is great.
Well, we were just talking offline, 20 some odd years since we were in high school together.
It's been a few, yeah. It's funny how they add up. I always say when you start talking about your life in decades, it becomes a reality of where you're at, which is good.
My son's 16. He goes, "You're 42. That's ancient." I said, "You're ancient." So putting it into his perspective. But we left Loveland High, kind of went on our own journeys of just leadership and really, really similar things. We both authored books, and you're here doing really big things in the Loveland community. So would love to just hear your story, some of the things that you're doing and how you're going out just to impact people in the community. I want to talk about the travels and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Lots of good stuff. Yeah, for sure. So growing up here in Loveland, went actually out east for about 10 years. Went to college out there in Boston University. Go Terriers.
Nice.
And then found myself working in national campaign politics for a couple of years after college. And, at that point, I decided to come back to Loveland for some family reasons, and really started digging into the community here and realizing that you can be a, big fish in a small pond kind of thing and make some true impact on a community. And I don't know, there's always been something about Loveland in my community that I can't quite explain, but I have this visceral need to try and help make it a better place, or at least, it's an amazing place, so not necessarily make it better, but sustain and maintain it for future generations. I can't say that when I started out on my journey, being a mother was really a significant, thing I was thinking of. And then some things changed, and I can tell you it's sincerely the most important part of my journey now. And it defines me the most, and it's the role that I lean into the most. And, I had served on Loveland City Council for 4 years and actually decided not to run for re-election. If you read my book, it talks all about that, and we'll talk more about it too, I'm sure. But really, it was an opportunity at that point in 2019 to look at myself and look at what really matters in life and how you really make change. And I realized that it had to start with myself first. And so I did that work. I did the work, and I stopped a lot of things, one of which was continuing the cycle of this need to succeed and prove and be something, and realizing that, in fact, being a mother was the single greatest thing that I could possibly do. And so I decided for my kids and myself and my family and my future that not running for re-election was actually the right thing to do. And so yeah, it's been a journey for sure, since good old Loveland High days. But I think a lot of the things that I learned there still hold true today. But it's my passion for wanting to make a difference. It's just that evolves, I think, as you get older, and recognizing where you can make a difference and how you can make a difference and what matters.
Yeah.
So.
Was there a turning point in coming to that conclusion of, hey, I'm stepping away from politics, at least the way you were involved in them and running, and really focusing on being a mom? Was there like one event, or was it just kind of a culmination of different things? Like, what was that turning point for you? What did that look like?
Well, jumping right in on a very personal level, I think I was struggling with all sorts of things. Again, that need to succeed, this all-consuming um, belief that I was defined by the things that I accomplished and not just by who I was.
Yeah.
And I think, I in that time frame in my life, I was struggling with substance abuse. I was struggling with deep depression, probably some postpartum depression, some real human things that
Yeah.
people deal with, and they're all things that happen as coping mechanisms to really kind of mask really underlying things. And so what I had to do is really start to learn to advocate for myself. My whole entire career to that point had been I was advocating for all of these things and all of these causes, but the one thing I had never advocated for was myself. And so when I turned it kind of all upside down and said, no, I need to do this for myself first, and then I can be a better mother, a better daughter, a better wife, a better citizen.
Yeah.
And so I think also in that space, as it was a really dark place in my life, acknowledging that and then really working through getting to the trauma and all of the things that had happened and acknowledging those and understanding that they don't define me. They are part of me and part of my story, but not who I am. Much like the things that I accomplish aren't who I am either. It's, just who you are as a person and that existence. And when you get to that and you find that place, I find that it really becomes then about authentic leadership, right? Like telling your story, being honest about the experiences that have happened and that get you to where you are, and then saying, you know what, this isn't working. And I need help and I need to change things. And that's what I did. So in 2019, I drastically changed everything. And I am all the better for it and much happier for sure.
I'm so proud of you, A, for doing it, and B, for sharing that story. How have you been able to, so what did that journey look like? So it's 2019. You keep talking about, and you mentioned a couple times that like need to succeed. Have you always had that? Because like we weren't super close. High school days, we were 2 years apart, but I do remember student council.
Yeah.
Right. Was that and politics in that world? Did you know you were always going to go into that world? Did you always have that drive? Like, where did that come from? Because I have that as well. And I on the flip side, I think I struggle with very similar things. So I'm just curious your relation to that.
I don't know. I mean, it's something that's been innately in me forever. I also think there was a relationship with my mom that was challenging in that space and this pressure to constantly do those things. But I think at some point it becomes internalized too. Like it becomes a part of you, even if it came from an external influence. And so I think, I started working on campaigns when I was in high school. I was student body president and captain of the debate team and captain of the golf team and, and.
Yeah.
And I really felt from that point, and then through most of my life until 2019, that it was those external accomplishments that were what was defining me. And so to mask the, and then when I was in college, I had an incident where I was sexually assaulted. And so I think that trauma and then the trauma just from growing up and the pressure, it was just, it spirals, right? And if you don't really acknowledge it and deal with it, then you get in a place where you are in a really dark spot. And that's where I was. And, so that need to prove something was so overwhelming that it consumed me. And, that was always going to be the next thing that made it better. Like, if I run for higher office, that'll make it better. If I do this,
Yes.
that'll make it better.
Yeah.
And in fact, every time I took a step to do something more intense or go deeper into the space of success in politics, the worse it got. And so I think that was when I acknowledged that, like, I think substance abuse was a problem at that point in my life. There's no doubt. But the true problem was this need to constantly prove everything. I think in my book, I said the quote that I think I could have been president of the moon and it wouldn't have been enough. Like there was just nothing enough that was enough that would have made that hole that I was trying to fill inside me. And so I think that acknowledgement shifted everything.
So you're 4 years into that journey.
Yeah.
How has that been? Where are you at now? What would you share to somebody that's entering where you were in 2019? What were the big takeaways for you?
Oh, it's so much better. Life is awesome. I tell this story when I went to rehab, and I remember thinking, I was an elected official. I was very public, the belief that, if I admitted that I had problems, my life was going to be over. And I remember sitting there the first day thinking that, like, this is it. My life is over. If anyone finds out about all of this, I'm never going to, get elected again. There was all these things I hadn't quite come to the terms with. I wasn't running yet. But the truth of the matter is that's when my life really began. That's when I started, healing and forgiving and finding so much joy in the things that matter. And even, I think, also realizing that there's so much that, and I don't mean doesn't matter, but shouldn't impact you. It's shouldn't come into your being and shift who you are, because that's not defining you, no matter which way it is. And so, I think I've really doubled down on priorities. And like I said, being a mom is the most important thing. And so, not running was as much about my children as it was about me, and being present and there for them on their journey and empowering them. Just yesterday, actually, my daughter, they have Spirit Week this week at school. And yesterday was dress up like someone who inspires you. And she chose to dress up like me. And I might get a little emotional because that's what I do. But to be able to be that present, that I'm impacting her life in that much of a positive way, like that's the kind of change that I want to make. And so I feel so grateful. And that's part of it too. Like just finding gratitude and the simple things makes you realize how great life really is. And it's so easy to get marred in the negative. And believe me, I am overtly aware I work in politics. Like I'm aware of the world. I'm aware of the things that happen. I'm aware of the negative things, but also I can operate in my life and live the life I want to live in the way that I believe the world should be. And it's not, maybe it's tragic optimism or whatever they call it, but I believe that persevering through hard times with a positive attitude is really what's shifted in my life. And also understanding that, priorities, what's important and what's not. I think that's really helped shift it. And so, it comes into, we travel more and we spend time together differently. And it's about creating that experience and those meaningful times with the people that matter. And I feel like that then permeates out in how I impact the world.
Hey, just want to give a big shout out to one of our sponsors, Imprint Digital. If you're a small business owner, one of the things that you need to navigate to be successful is all things online and digital in terms of marketing and your messaging. Imprint Digital, they're the real deal. They are the professionals and they know this world inside and out. Make sure to visit their website at imprint-digital.com. If your life or business are cluttered up with junk right now, then you've got to reach out to one of our sponsors, Hulk Addicts Hauling. Hulk addicts can come out to your home or business to do anything from removing junk to appliances. Maybe you're demoing or doing construction on a property and you need it cleared out. Maybe you need a big dumpster dropped off that they can roll off later. Make sure to check them out at hulkaddictsjunk.com. They are serving all of northern Colorado as well as up and down the Front Range. So question about that. Now, can you see others that are always striving to do more? Can you see it from a different perspective when you see other people in that same place you were?
Yeah. I mean, I reference it often, especially in, spaces of politics and leadership and that, because while I do believe our society is shifting in some regard, for a long time, that has been what has been the definition of success, right? Is what does your resume look like? What did you accomplish? How much money did you make? Yeah. All of these things are what we define as success. And I think, so it's really easy to spot, quite frankly. Yeah. But I think as personally, I started to redefine what success even meant for me. It allowed me to, really strategically choose what it is I'm working on, why I'm working on it.
So what are the big things you've got cooking right now? 'Cause you're involved in politics just in a different way. Want to dig into the book and then talk about the travels you've got coming up. You do some retreats and experiences with women.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to hear about that.
Yeah. So, well, I think, to answer the first part of your question, which isn't what I love to talk about, because I'd much rather talk about the book and that sort of stuff. But I think, from a community engagement standpoint, one of the things that I've really tried to focus on is the policies. I know that's kind of, it becomes just nerdy, but the policies are what matter. And for me, it's about good policy. And the people, they change. Politicians change. All of this stuff changes all the time. But policy is something that stays with us for a long time. So how we get to good policy, and something I've always been passionate about, is housing affordability and affordable housing. Yeah. I've worked very hard on that, not just here in Loveland, but across the region and even some into the state. And so, I think as I continue to keep that balance of, not jumping too deep into the work that I'm doing defining me, the more I can focus on it being about good policy and not about people, the better balance it is. Because again, politicians, they're a dime a dozen. We get new ones all the time. And so, so that's been kind of my focus there. And that's, I think, really allowed me to find a balance in that space where I don't get so consumed by winning and losing, because that's often the definition in the political space. But it's about the success of lasting policy that will impact communities for a long time to come. So, so that's kind of the political space. We'll get that out of the way because,
well, let's talk about the book.
Yeah.
Like, what made you decide to write a book? Tell me about that journey. Because it's a journey.
It is. You know this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. My dad said it was an act of divine intervention. So there's that.
Okay.
I never thought I would write a book. I mean, it wasn't on my radar. It wasn't something I aspired to do. But I think actually after I walked out of rehab in 2019, I said to a couple people, I'm going to write a book. Like, I have a story. I knew I did. And I believe that our stories are our authentic stories, our real stories are all we have. And this idea that we should have shame or embarrassment or guilt or, be afraid of judgment is, I don't know, it's there and it's strong.
Yeah. But
my story is not unique. Like, very few parts of my story are unique to me. I mean, there's trauma and there's family challenges and there's substance abuse and there's all of these things that happen to many, many people. And we just don't talk about them enough. And so it felt like, that idea that to those who are given much, much is expected kind of thing. Like I have been given the gift of so many things. And I was also given the gift of the power to share my story. And because of my experience, even in this little pond of Northern Colorado, I know the power of telling the truth empowers other people to tell their own truths. And I've heard that a lot. And, it was really scary. I wrote the book, and in some ways it wrote itself. It just came out. It just needed to come out, I think. But once it did, and as scary as that was, because all of those things, that fear of what are people going to say? Are they going to judge me? Are they going to?
Yes.
Probably. And you know what? Oh, well. Because to those people, I think, actually, it's funny. My quote in my senior yearbook was a Dr. Seuss quote that said something to the effect, and I'm going to make sure I get it right here. Those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. And so I had that sentiment even back as a senior in high school that at some point, those who are going to judge are going to judge anyway, so let them judge. And by telling the story, I have, one, felt so much more free. Like you're not carrying all this stuff around that you're trying to pretend you're something you're not. And also the people who have come to me and said, thank you. Thank you for telling your story. Your story has empowered me to do this. Your story has empowered me to do this. So if it helps one person, it matters. So
I love that. Did you ever get to a point in the book? So all this comes out and you're looking at it, right? You shared the story. You're like, I can't share this, because I've had that with both books. I'm like, I can't put this out there. Do you get that like fear to release?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that time between right before, when the initial draft went out to kind of your pre-readers or whatever.
Yep.
I mean, that was a really long 2 weeks to finally get feedback from someone who was like, this is amazing. This is great. Because otherwise in your mind, you're creating the own, the narrative of what they might say.
Yep.
And, I think that's part of it though, too. Like the fear of the unknown is what we fear the most.
Yeah. What was some of the most surprising feedback? Or, something you think somebody's going to say something and they give you a total 180, total curveball, or what was the most insightful that you got? If you're a Christian small business owner and you live in Northern Colorado, you have to check out one of our sponsors, the Foundry Advisory. The Foundry is a Christian executive peer advising group that connects other business owners in the community to help you focus on your faith, your life, your leadership, and your business. Make sure to check them out at thefoundryadvisory.com. A big shout out and thank you to one of our sponsors, M&D Painting and Roofing. M&D was actually founded by my wife Emily and I back in 2005. And for the last 2 decades, we've been here in Northern Colorado of one of the leaders in residential and commercial repainting, as well as most recently installing residential roofs. So if you need to paint, re-roof, you got hit by a hailstorm, we can take care of whatever your home needs from top to bottom. You can find us on the web at mandepainting.com. Hey, if you're a business owner and you need to do some renovation in your space or possibly build a building from the ground up, you have to connect with one of our sponsors, Mendel Construction. Mendel Construction is a commercial construction company that's been around since 1997, serving all of Colorado. They can do a small tenant finish all the way up to ground-up construction of a new building for your business. Check them out at mendelandcompany.com. That's MENDEL and company.com.
I guess I was intrigued to see how people applied it to their own lives. Because, like I said, some of it, so much of the themes of it are not unique. But someone would come to me and say a story that was totally different than mine, but they still took out themes of it and applied it to their life. I think in some ways, I mean, it's because I'm a woman and a mother, and there's that clear targeted audience.
Mm-hmm.
There's that space of people who I think it would influence. I think sometimes it's the people outside of that space who come and say, "Thank you for sharing the story. It was really powerful because now I understand my daughter better, or now I understand like my wife better." Like that was, I think I didn't think, I don't know, I wasn't prepared for that kind of impact.
So the people outside that
Yeah.
demographic that are still getting insight.
Yeah.
Because you're doing some things with women. You've got a passion for helping women. I'm in the space and I help a lot of men. So just in that process, you think men were able to get better perspective on wives, daughters? What other kind of insights from men? Just kind of a curiosity and feedback did you get as a woman sharing your story?
I mean, it was a lot of that. I think trauma is something that, a lot of women have experienced the same kind of trauma. And so talking about my experience with that allowed them to maybe have a lens that they wouldn't otherwise have. I think being a mother and the challenges that surround that, especially early on in, say, like postpartum depression and those sorts of things, I think just that lens into some of those challenges that they might not actually have experienced, but someone then talking about it allows them to have a better perception on women in their lives that they're dealing with.
And that postpartum, that hit our family. And Emily's been on the podcast a few times, and she had it with our first child, with Riley, and had really no idea, wasn't talked about. Other women that had gone through it hadn't really talked about it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until after she went through that and she found out, oh yeah, that's a fairly common thing. So we were a little bit more prepared for it the second time around.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are just so many challenges, whether it's mental health or addiction or trauma, that, we're getting better about. But again, as a society, we just don't talk about it. And so that's, I guess, part of, it wasn't my goal to begin with, for sure. I mean, part of it was, here's a story. I have to tell the story. This is my story. This is what happened. But then when you start to see the results and the impact, that's when you're like, okay, this is what we need to talk about more. Yeah. And those are things we need to talk about more, because the more we normalize it, the less people are dealing with it in isolation and solitude, and the more empowered they are to live their authentic selves. And it makes it easier. I mean, talking about it truly does make it easier. I mean, the truth, that whole idea, the truth will set you free. Like, once my story was out there, I was like, all right, we're good. Like, it felt freeing to share it. Yeah. And I would encourage people to share their stories in whatever way, shape, or form, because the power of storytelling and the power of telling your story, I mean, that's where people look to for leadership and inspiration. And if we hold it in, and it's not just me, it's you, it's all of us, everybody, because the power of more stories diminishes the power of the shame and the judgment and the guilt and all of those things that build up all these negative things in our lives. So I
feel like everybody's got a book. Everybody's got an amazing story. That's what's been so cool about this podcast. It's like everybody from different backgrounds and business and leadership, public figures, and they're just out here sharing real stuff.
Yeah, my publisher says that all the time. Everyone has a book. What's your book?
So what's been the reaction just as it's been put out there? I know you said you're not focusing on it as much, and there's more you want to do with it. But what's been some of the feedback as it's been out there?
Generally, it's been great. I mean, people are so supportive of telling the truth. And, it's funny. I always say in politics, where there's a void of information will flow. So basically, if you're not telling your story, somebody else will.
Yes.
And so it's one of those things where, for so long, as a public figure, you're trying to mask everything and pretend everything's fine, even though I was clearly not fine. And other people knew it. And then other people start telling your story for you. And I'm like, but that's not my story. And so in some ways, like when I wrote the book, it was just reclaiming the story. This is me. This is who I am. This has been my experience.
Yeah.
This is the facts. And so, I think that experience is,
What would you say to somebody that is like right on the cusp of wanting to share their story, and they've got the fear of judgment, or there's shame there, or maybe they're in a space where they might be judged, right? You're going to be at some point, but what would you say to somebody that was there?
I mean, do it. Tell your story. I mean, I guess in some cases, what's the worst that could happen, right? Like, look at your life where you're at now, and what's the worst that could happen? So in my case, where I was, say, in 2019, I was in a super dark space. And, I mean, I haven't quite said this here, but I mean, had I not changed things, I might not be here. There's probably a really good chance I wouldn't be here. And so when I say look at, like, could it get worse? Because I mean, at that point, the worst was I took my own life and I was no longer here. So if the journey from there to where I am today is what it is, and it's been so rewarding, I go back to what's the worst that could happen? Because telling the truth, telling your truth only empowers you more to advocate for yourself more, find the right paths to healing and that joy. I mean, my book is called Finding Fantastic Joy. I don't think we've actually said that. So like, that's the whole purpose of like this journey, and my sharing my story is there is a journey to joy all the time. And it's not an instantaneous thing, and it doesn't happen, but it's a, small incremental thing. But then sometimes it is big things, like telling your story all at once, and the power of that. I haven't in recovery and all of that space. AA isn't really my thing, but that's what that whole foundation is about, is like telling your truth and telling your story pulls that out of you and allows you then to heal. And in some ways, when you tell other people and it becomes outside of you, it actually literally isn't sitting inside of you anymore. And it's that process of releasing it allows that empowerment. And so I'd say do it.
Love it. Where do you vision taking your story and the message with the book? Like, where do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, well, so I've started leading women's retreats in Mexico, outside Mexico City at a place called Teotihuacan. It's the Toltec kind of spiritual belief space, but it's really about personal growth and personal connection, and spiritual can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. So, and have you heard of the 4 Agreements?
Yes.
Yeah. So Don Miguel Ruiz does all of his retreats just down the street from where I do mine. So kind of same concept. And the women that I've worked with down there, one of them now owns her own hotel, because, manifesting a hotel in a Mexican village is awesome. And that's what she did. And so it's in that belief of, this idea that we dream our own reality and we get to create our own reality. And that work is done there. And so I work with the healers and the different local folks who have a great connection with the land and the ancestors there, and help women kind of guide them through that process. Just more of a guide than anything, but because I've been going down there for over 10 years now. I started there on my own journeys. And then I think that was really part of the cracking Pandora's box of needing to keep healing and getting better and growing and finding that space of joy that I could see always on the horizon, but hadn't quite got there yet. And so given my relationships and my years of experience down there, it's a real honor to be able to take women and guide them and hopefully help, them find a pathway to that healing too. So
That's really cool. When is your next one?
My next one is in January, end of January,
Okay.
like January 29th through February 4th.
And then are you taking women from like anywhere across the country? Is it more your local network here, or how are you?
It's become both now.
Okay.
So yeah, it's both across the country, and then I've some really great local women have come with me as well. So
Awesome.
it's both, and it's expanding. And I truly would love to, big vision is focus on that and have that be the space that when you talk about making an impact and growth, that's so powerful to help people find a space where they dig into their authentic selves and can tell their story and advocate for themselves in that space. Politics is politics, but that's truly rewarding.
How many women do you take down? Like, what is the group? What does the trip look like?
Maximum of 8.
Okay.
And so it's small. And I think that's important to me. It's about, that connection. And I think there's something it's really important, having women and that the energy that, we connect with on that space. That's what makes, for me, really powerful. I found my healing and growth kind of in that feminine energy space. Yeah. And so I think the idea to continue to empower other women to lean into that and then grow it's small and intimate and powerful.
Really cool. And how long do they go down?
It's a week-ish. And it culminates with a hot air balloon ride over the pyramids. So
really cool.
It is really cool.
Awesome. So when in January is it?
The 29th.
Okay.
Through February 4th. So
awesome. And you're doing those once a year?
Twice now. So there'll be another one in July. So.
Awesome.
So, yep. And there's still a few spots left for January.
Okay.
And actually July is now about half full as well. So
how's that experience been? So we do adventures to Spain. So
yeah.
We're doing leadership adventures. We hiked the Camino with a group of men, and we're doing a father-son adventure in June of 2024. What's been some of the biggest challenges for you planning and throwing events? Because it's so much work. So much work, so rewarding, so fulfilling.
It is. I don't know. I mean, for me, we were talking offline earlier, like travel planning is just a hobby of mine. And in fact, someday I have this dream of maybe doing like travel coaching to encourage families to travel like our family travels, because we really try and be really adventurous and, not do the just guided tour thing, but get into the culture and get into the places. And so maybe one day that's where I'll go. But so I don't know that I find it hard or challenging, because it's just, again, it's a space that's so rewarding for me. So it's, I don't know. But I mean, travel logistics.
Yeah.
But again, if you anticipate it, like you always know something's going to go wrong. So just being ready and adapting. Like I always think of this. We went to Costa Rica during the rainy season, and a friend of mine was like, "Oh, it was terrible. I was wet and cold the whole time and blah, blah, blah." So the whole time prior to the trip, I was prepping my kids. I'm like, we're going to be wet, we're going to be cold, but it's going to be great and it's going to be fun and blah, blah, blah. And like just kept going on. And we got there and, it rained like an hour a day. And I didn't even notice the rain because I had so mentally prepared ourselves for, if it rains, it rains. It's going to be great. And so I think that little anecdote is true with any travel or anything in life. Like, the rain's going to come, but being prepared for it is all that really matters.
I love it. And then do you speak Spanish? Have you gotten to learn Spanish with your travels down there?
So I'm on Duolingo right now, working hard. But my children, they go to Truscott Elementary School, which is a dual immersion. So my fourth grader is pretty much fluent in Spanish at this point. And now my first grader is well on his way. So I figured either way I need to learn the language, because otherwise my children are going to know another language that I don't. And that seems like...
And they can talk about you.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
not good.
So, but working on it.
Now, have you manifested like a space down there, or do you eventually vision with these retreats you're doing that do you go to the same space? Are you looking to try to acquire a space? Is that part of the plan?
No. So we go to the woman who I've worked down there with for years. She's the one who manifested her own hotel and retreat space, and that it's just wonderful and lovely. Though I don't know what long-term looks like. I think if we're talking manifesting, I'd certainly like at minimum, a place where we could go and stay long-term. And with my children being, bilingual at this point, we can travel and they can go to school in any Spanish-speaking country, which is pretty cool. So.
Love it. What do you see the biggest thing that people are missing? That are missing that joy, just based on your journey and your experience as you navigate through life? You're on the other side of it. You can see it in everybody else. Like, what would you just say to those people? How would you challenge them?
I think part of the challenge is, especially for people who kind of come from this like need to succeed, is it's also this need to fix everything, or be responsible for everything, or every, all the roaming dogs in Mexico, you're not responsible for all of them. And I use that as an example because it's a very real thing. Like, there's this need to fix and point out what's wrong and then fix. And I think acknowledging that you don't have to fix everything, and it's not your responsibility to fix everything. And if you don't, it's okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a challenge that a lot of people face, and I did for a long time. And I also think the idea that, again, I'm overtly aware of the challenges of the world. But I also choose not to dwell in them. I mean, what you talk about, what your conversations are, those impact your entire existence. And so if you're dwelling in what you saw on cable news today, like you're not, no matter which side you're on, I'm just saying, like, all of it, like, that becomes this like manifesting this negative space constantly.
Yeah.
And so like what you surround yourself with and the conversations you have and the things you listen to, they all impact your overall state of being and your overall level of joy. And, you can still be an aware citizen and not be drowning in the problems that we have.
Yeah. So what are your hopes here for Loveland? We're both Loveland community members, not even to get into the politics of it, but just with everything you're doing, this shift out of politics into more of the things that matter. But what do you hope to see for the community here as it moves forward?
Well, I think it's true of an individual or a community, but understanding the value, right? Like, as an individual, what is my value? And not in the sense of what have I accomplished, but who I am as a human. And I think that's true of a community. And, we grew up here. We know the growth and the change of a community. And I think when you're so intimately engaged with community development and community growth, there's sometimes you lose a global perspective. And so for me, it's as a community, we can have the right conversations to create the value that we want for the future, for our kids, because I know people did that for us a generation ago in some regards.
Yeah.
And so I think and understanding that that value isn't, we might not all agree, but collectively moving forward to create value is important. And I think that gets lost a lot of times. I mean, as we look at both who we are as individuals, we lose that. And then as community development too.
One thing that just kind of squirreled into my mind is Loveland's a pretty small community. Like who have been some of the people that have impacted your life from, do you still run into teachers from high school or people from the community? Because I've run into a couple just recently. It seems like in the past couple of weeks that you would give a shout out to.
Yeah, no,
if they're listening.
It's funny. We live in downtown Loveland, and my daughter and I were riding our bikes. This was probably last summer, and Becky Langford was in her front yard. And
the infamous Becky Langford.
And we stopped and I talked to her for a second, and I looked at Frankie and I said, "This is the lady who's responsible for my entire career decisions."
Yeah.
But I mean, it's true between her and Mr. Felton and Michael James. I mean, those were three people at that level that impacted me so greatly and inspired leadership in me.
Yes.
I mean, Michael James' inspiration of leadership is, notable. And, both Becky Langford and Mr. Felton's passion for government and that. I mean, for them to, get up in front of a class and share that passion, and then it literally plant a seed in me and grow to where for now 25 years I've been engaged with trying to, work in our system and make good policy. I mean, it's pretty powerful. So yeah, locally, I mean, for sure, there's been some amazing people. And, I think there's continues to be leaders in the community that we look to. So
I really appreciate you coming on. This has been awesome to catch up after all these years. We wrap up the show same way with everybody. When you came here, you grabbed your favorite color.
I did.
Off the wall, and you've got a quote or little
My favorite
excerpt.
color is orange.
Yes.
Although I do love me some Frida Kahlo blue. So there's that.
So what statement do you want to leave with the world when you leave it?
Well, this is what I put. Sinking deep into yourself, advocating for yourself first, and owning your authentic story allows you to be a better human. Authentic leadership starts with authentic self. Own your story, advocate for yourself, and you will find joy.
Love it. Leah, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Appreciate
thanks for having me, Matt.
Hey, if you're a faith-based father and you have a son who is entering into adolescence and manhood, you've got to check out an experience that we have June 2024. It is the Father-Son Hike of a Lifetime on the Camino de Santiago in Spain. I'm going to be taking a group of men and their sons over to Spain to hike some of the most beautiful scenery through northern Spain on the Camino de Santiago. We're going to hike 6 days, 70 miles, 200,000 steps, and have completely disconnected, unplugged, uninterrupted time with our sons. We are going to grow and bond and deepen our relationships with our sons through some very intentionally curated adventures, challenges, and experiences. And we're going to do so in the company of other faith-based men who have the same desire to grow and deepen their story with their son. If you're interested in this adventure with us, go to mattshoup.com. Click the Go to Spain button and check out the Father-Son Hike of a Lifetime.